Hey folks, we're back this week and we're going to go over what you need to know about signals. Has MeteorJS always had signals? It does something. What are signals about? What are they exactly? So we're gonna get into that today. Talk a little bit about what it is, and on a high level, and then we're going to talk about why we think pursuing this issue about signals is important to stay relevant in the JavaScript community. We're also going to have some live coding, I believe, with a topic that Kuster has brought to mind, which are reactive data structures. So if you're not sure what that is all about, you want to stick around and you want to watch it all the way through the end. In any case, my name is Alim Ghaffar. I'm streaming to you live from New York City, and this is episode 62 of This Week in MeteorJS, a weekly newscast of the Meteor Dispatches podcast. All right, and with me today are, let's see who's there.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jan Dvorak, aka Storyteller, coming to you live from Sendai, Japan, and
Jan Kuster, live from Germany. Welcome.
And with that, as we normally do, we'll get right into the news.
Yeah, so today I'm starting with the news, and this is something that's actually interesting and useful for every one of us because the WebStorm and Rider are now free for non-commercial use. Jan, if you'd like to display my shared screen, then I can show everyone the blog article. And that's coming from JetBrains themselves on their article. You can now use WebStorm for free for any open source project you develop without any issue. So in the past, it was only free for educational purposes, and there was this grayish area on this whole open source thingy because it wasn't. If you educate yourself, it's okay, but you're not part of an institution, so it's really hard to get this educational license, and you had to pay a fee or use the trial version. And now you can entirely freely use WebStorm and Rider. And I personally love that because I'm a WebStorm user. I mean, I have the educational license, okay? But if I would work on my private side of it for all my open source projects, I would keep using WebStorm for that. And I don't want to make any advertising here. I also know that VS Code is the same powerful. I just love this out-of-the-box experience in WebStorm as I do with Meteor. And with that, maybe Jan, you can answer something on that because I think you also used IntelliJ
yes,
from time to time.
I use WebStorm. It's my primary IDE, and I have the commercial license, so that's where I'm at. So for me, it sadly doesn't add anything new.
Okay, but anyway, I think this is for the overall developer community a very positive development. And Jan, do you have any experience with the AI toolings in WebStorm?
Yes, I have. So you can integrate the default JetBrains one, or you can use GitHub Copilot. And I think with everything AI these days, it's a hit and miss. With Meteor, sadly, more often misses than hits, especially when it comes to Meteor specific functionality.
Yeah, that's always a little bit hassle. Okay, I'm leaving at that here, and I think the next part of the news is yours, Jan.
Yes, as always, we must not forget the Meteor news. That's what this show is primarily about. But before that, if you like what we are doing, especially once we move to our main news and the big topic afterwards, don't forget to leave us a like and somewhere down below in the video. Now off to the Meteor news. First of all, Meteor 3.1 release candidate has been released. It has, as always, a load of bug fixes, some improvements all over the board, especially on performance. And also this one includes the official roles package migrated from the A-Laning roles from communities. So check that out. You can, if you start using this version, you can migrate your aligning roles to the official Meteor roles. The only thing that you have to do is remove the namespace, and it will just work as you are used to. So it's very easy.
Sorry.
Very, very easy transition. Next,
Sorry,
I
just showed the wrong forum post. So while you were talking about the RC, I showed it from the next one that's on me. So there's also the forums article here.
Yes, and of course, as I said, it's rescanned, so please give it a try. Let us know if you encounter, or let the Meteor team know if you encounter any issues. So you can go to GitHub, post on the pull request itself, or just create a new issue, and everybody involved, and I will be happy to take a look on that. Speaking of the next one, we have a release in Blaze. So what is all that about, Jan?
Yeah, so we had this Blaze 3.01 release already coming for a while. It's just it just delayed a little bit. There was mostly a promise issue that has been resolved for a few runtime problems that it caused. So that was basically this one where Radoslav fixed the promise support in the with context. So usually it's discouraged in Blaze to use the with context, but I myself use it a lot because sometimes it's just the better alternative to write more lean templates and more reusable templates. And then there was some broken promise support. He fixed that. Then we had some issues. As you can see, it was on September 13. Now it's finally out. So if you had problems with Blaze and promises, you should update to the latest release. And one more thing before we move to the next one, Jan, I just wanted to add something here to the three
301. I think you have the wrong one there.
Yeah, I also got the wrong one. Sorry. Today it's a little bit
mixed signals.
Yeah, that's.
But go ahead. What do you have for us?
Let's move to the next one. No, it's fine. I just wanted to say with the 3.1 release, this is also the one where the roles package will be part of, which we introduced in the stream with the Nielsen together.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Next news is from the hosting side on Galaxy. It's very important if you're using Galaxy. There is a DNS update that you need to change where your domain is pointing towards the Galaxy servers. Mea culpa, guys. I think I'm partially responsible for this one. Was it 2 weeks ago? One of my companies got hit by a DDoS attack, and as we were mitigating it, kind of came up with some, or I think the team behind Galaxy came up with some changes to help kind of prevent this in the future and make it easier. So the upside is that once this transition is over, your apps in general will be much more protected from malicious attackers and users who wants to bring you down via DDoS attacks or something similar. And I do believe there is a article in Works how you can set up your Meteor applications with Cloudflare and hopefully some other services as well. So keep an eye out on that one to come out hopefully in the coming weeks as well, so you can enhance your security with Cloudflare and potentially performance as well. There's a lot to kind of discuss and explore in this regard.
And if you're a Galaxy customer and you haven't noticed this already, then you should check your email settings, because Galaxy already sent emails out to the customer as well. So if you didn't receive that, then you should definitely check your spam folders.
Yes, or you can find it on the forums and on the Galaxy roadmap as well. So let's take a look at community packages. We have two, or I could say one release and one beta release. collection 2 had a patch release, 4.04 version, which includes backfix, removal of Lodash dependency, and extension of test suite, which is helpful for us, but you won't see that in the release. But hopefully it will help in the long term. Also, if you are using Hertz-be denormalized package and are moving to Meteor 3, please use the 0.7 beta, where we are testing things for Meteor 3, and we need your feedback so that we can move to the final release on that. Finally, on these Meteor news, we have one more item after this, but there is a new user called Digital Extremist, very catchy name, and he has spawned a few interesting topics and contributed very much to other discussions. He has a very much, could say, higher view on many things, and very unusual, I think, for our space is that he has a very much more long form writing format. So it definitely takes a bit sometimes to get through his post, but I would highly recommend it because it touches on many things and makes you think about other larger topics around the specific discussion as well. So very much recommended. Give his topics a look and contribute to those discussion, because I think there might be some interesting things coming out of that. And with new people coming in, we have updates on the Meteor team. There has been kind of restructuring of what Meteor software wants to do with their teams and strategies. So we have Kami and Nilsson leaving the team, and we have Gabriel Grubak coming back to Meteor software part-time for right now. Hopefully we'll have him full-time back in the future. So this is part of the wider strategy of how the team communicates with other developers, and kind of they're shifting in how they communicate in general, and some other things that they are planning in the future. So that's it for the news. Jan, anything else to add?
It's not only the Nielsen who's leaving. So Camilla and Bruno are also leaving the team. And so Camilla was also always in our stream, by the way. So unfortunately, she's not there today, so that we can say a goodbye here. And the Nielsen also not here today, unfortunately. But I really loved all this communication style with the Meteor team, because we are very close to the team, and I always felt very well, very well supported with our TWIM, and this is really cool. So I hope this will keep going the way with Gabs. We also stayed in contact with Gabs, and let's see how that goes.
Yeah, I believe we don't have anybody from Brazil with us today because there is some public holidays. At least that's what I've kind of gathered from different statuses and other things happening.
So if anyone is from Brazil, is there by any chance in the stream, let us know what this holiday is about. Actually, I'm a little bit interested now. Why everybody is leaving? Why everybody is on holiday today. I mean. Okay, so if you still haven't subscribed to our channel, then I highly suggest you to do it, because then you will not miss any of the updates we're bringing. There are also upcoming tutorials now, because as you know, from time to time we also publish some tutorials on MeteorJS, and we will be back on doing that. And if you want to get notified, then you should subscribe. Also, if you subscribe, you support us in our mission to grow and spread the word on MeteorJS and to grow as a channel, and every subscribe will help us to get there.
All right, and we are moving on to our next segment, which is part of our Understanding Meteor. So we have a sponsorship from Galaxy, the hosting behind Meteor. So if you go, let me pull up the banners as well. You can go to meteor.software/dispatches-offer, and you can plug in dispatches that -60. Let me play the video for you again, and that will give you $60 discount code, which will give you about 2 months or more, depending on how you use it, of free use of Galaxy. That's dispatches-60.
So by the way, you
with
can
that,
also get MongoDB hosting for $8 a month. So this is also quite nice to have it integrated with your $60 plan. It's all included. Batteries included, basically. And I think now it's time for Alim to get back to the next topic, right?
Yes. So I'm hoping, I'm trying to straighten this thing out to segregate my notes from the presentation. So let's see if I'm being successful here. Okay. You see the presentation screen here, right?
Yeah, we see. Let's see about
okay,
the
hang on a
Yes, yes.
second. Oh, there we go. All right, so it's all up here. So, okay, so hang on one second. I've got to move things over to my other screen so that way I can what happened just now? Something happened there. So let me move my notes over here. Right? So this episode we're talking about signals. And hold on one second, guys. I just realized I cannot see. Now I feel like I need more screens. Okay, all right, I can see better now. All right, so we are. What happened? Hang on one second. Okay. All right. So we're covering signals today, and this has come out because we've been seeing a lot of discussion, talk. The JavaScript community seems to, over the last couple of years, been really excited about this idea of signals. And I know we have sat back from time to time and kind of poo-pooed it, saying that, oh, we've had this capability for a very long time. I mean, we've got Tracker. And as I was thinking about it a little more, I realized I really didn't know very much about signals other than it's a way of handling reactivity differently than it had been before. And there was a movement, or there has been a movement now, to try to standardize this. And there's a TC39 proposal out, and I have it up on the screen here, where they talk about trying to get this as a standard. Now, because there are a number of different frameworks that are involved in this, for instance, Vue.js, Angular of all things, Svelte, and Quick, and some others are all interested in this, and they all have some implementation of some kind of signals. I thought it might make a little sense to kind of understand a little more what signals are about, how they differ, and why it is that we might want to take a look at this. So signals are a way of handling reactivity. They say they term it fine-grained reactivity. And what that means to them is that you don't have a situation where you have large portions of your UI being recomputed and re-rendered. And the notion is that you could have very specific bits of information, specific bits of data that get updated when there's a change made, and only when there's a change made. And it would be direct and a little different than the way we normally handle things today. So there's some key characteristics to it. One of those key characteristics is that there is a reactive state. Signals are reactive by nature, meaning they automatically trigger updates whenever they are used and when their values change. So when the value changes itself, doesn't trigger the re-render. It's only when it's actually being used. And that's a key difference. It's sort of a pull rather than a push, as we experience when we are doing our changes through things like Tracker, or even if you're just using plain React updates. There's immutability of subscriptions. When you use a signal within a function or component, that function automatically subscribes to the signal's value. If the signal changes, the framework reruns the relevant function or component to reflect this new state. There is direct mutation and tracking. Unlike frameworks that use things like hooks, signals allow you to directly change the state. The framework then tracks this mutation and ensures it propagates through any dependent parts of the app. This can simplify state management by reducing boilerplate code needed to handle the state updates. So those are some of the things that are different about it. Now, why do I have this slide? I noticed as I was reading the proposal that there are a number of different players in here, but I don't see MeteorJS represented. We've got, Ember. I know the folks at Ember for a very long time, and Ember is about as old as we are, and I would say they have a smaller community, and yet they are here. So the question I had is, well, do we feel that what we have is so good and so different that it's not necessary? So that was sort of my thinking about it. There is a long article, very detailed article, if you're interested. Oh, let me go back for a second. By the way, you might notice that there is a QR code on the screen here. And if you click on that QR code, it will take you to the link to the document. The link to the document is written down below, but this will make it just a little bit easier for you if you need to get to it, if you want to get to the standard. Did the same thing for this article. It's much more involved, much more detailed explanation of how signals evolved, where it came from, and there's even a reference to MeteorJS in here. And again, this is an article I think is worthwhile in terms of looking at. There are a number of other resources that I came across, but I think if you start with these two, you'll get a good sense of what's going on with signals. Okay. So one of the things they mention in the article and in the proposal itself are what are the inspirations for signals. And in the early days, they say that Knockout.js is one of the frameworks that implemented something that looked like signals. And they used observables and computed values. And I bring this up because we use computed values and observables, but apparently it's not being used exactly the same way. So again, they start with this notion of fine-grained reactivity. All right. Now, the canonical example that's often given is with solid.js. And might have mentioned before that the article that I showed you earlier is written by one of the gentlemen behind solid.js. I think he actually might be the creator of it. And so what we have is we have this, they call it a reactive, what do they call that? They call it a reactive component. I forget exactly what they call it, but a signal is basically a reactive thing that has really three parts. There is a getter and a setter in it, and then there is some property that gets set and then gets read. And so we see that here, that what you would do with the solid.js library is you'd pull out this create signal, you'll import this create signal component, you and then you destructure the two functions. Now, initially, when I looked at this code, I thought that count was just a variable and set count was a function. It turns out that both count and set counts are variables. And you'll see this again and again in the examples. If you read the code, you'll see, for instance, message set message. And my initial readings from them was, oh, message is just a variable and set message is the function, but they're both functions. Count is the getter, message would be the getter, and set count obviously is the setter. So that's how you would make your changes to it. One of the interesting parts to me of this whole thing is the notion that they memoize. the values that are computed, so that if you get a computation that basically has the same inputs, it's not going to run that computation again. So it gets very, very it's very efficient that way. Now, there are other implementations that have been done with this, and I put them up here as examples. I probably should have lifted these a little higher so that it would be more visible. Vue.js, through its composition API, has its interpretation or its implementation of signals. It uses refs as a way to do that. And you'll notice that in this case, instead of using a setter, they're actually incrementing the value directly. And we see this pattern repeated over in Preact. Preact does basically the same thing here. I believe Quick does the same thing. I don't have it clearly set here, and I guess I'm missing, whoops, I'm missing a piece from my Angular Signals screenshot, but it also does it the same way. It changes the member value directly. But you can see that these different implementations of signals in these different frameworks, while they are effectively trying to do the same thing, don't necessarily go about it exactly the same way, which I think is why there is this move to get it standardized as an implementation. Now, I will say that there's one thing that I thought was very interesting in this when you read through the signals. When you read through the signals proposal, one of the things it mentions is that it is really built today to handle synchronous reactivity. There is a whole section where it says that they're not really pursuing the asynchronous part yet. They kind of walk through how you could do it, and I've seen some example code as to how it might be accomplished. But today, doing asynchronous reactive updates is not agreed upon within Signals. So I've talked too much at this point. I've shared, I think, what I know from this. There's a lot I don't know, and I think there are folks out there that have had some time and spent some time with this that have gone through it. So before I go on in terms of comparing the implementations, in terms of how it's put together and what it might be ideal for, I'm going to turn it back to the rest of the hosts to weigh in on this.
Yeah, I want to quickly, Alim, if you go to the first slide.
Yeah.
One kind of not really
Did
entirely, but
slideshow? Okay, yeah.
The one thing interesting there is it's missing React. React has not done any, in this I quickly checked. There is
React does have a proposal, but
but compared to everybody else, and also given lately where it's been heading, that's also very, very interesting. And I think given the signals but I've been getting from the React team, would say that signals is not something that they might want to pursue. So that's just like an interesting thing from this. But I had my experience with signals, signals and tracker in Solid, and that was compared to anything else, probably the smoothest integration that I had between Meteor and a front end other than Blaze.
Do you have any sample that you could show on that?
Not in my current setup, sadly, no. So I would have to.
But that's something you could show in your upcoming streams in the next weeks.
I will consider, actually, if you look on some of my old stream, I did a few streams on Solid and trying to rebuild my personal website on Solid, which went pretty good until I had to find internationalization, which we'll be talking 2 weeks from now. And sadly, I did not find a good enough library that I could use. So that's a different topic for 2 weeks from now.
Yeah,
I'll be happy to go into that. But beyond that, it was pretty easy, and at least the way Solid did it, integrating it with Tracker and Meteor functionality. Once I got a hang of it, was super easy, and there was like no need for any additional libraries because I could use Signals to wrap Tracker into it as well, and it was working very happily together.
Cool. So I have a theory why Tracker is not on that list, and that's not any conspiracy stuff. This is that they all just want to Meteor to lose or something like this. It's simply my opinion is that if Tracker would have become a loose or a decoupled NPM package, independent from Meteor, then and the problem is it could be now, because now there is no bound to fibers anymore. In the past, Tracker was also bound to fibers because you could have run Tracker on the server, and on the server you relied on fibers in order to be run in the Meteor method and so on. And that was the problem. Tracker was always this hardwired thing into Meteor, which is also why people mention Meteor as reactivity and not Tracker, because they even didn't know that it's Tracker actually. If that would have been a standalone library, then it would have been all the time a much different approach to reactivity than the others. So
isn't Tracker a library that you can import now from NPM?
No, it's still a Meteor package. There is some, you could easily make it a standalone library. I think Harry was pursuing making this standalone from time to time, but I think Meteor itself, MeteorJS or the MeteorJS namespace should, it should be a standalone package. Oh, and there is a comment from Kelly I just saw. Mostly that the Meteor team didn't participate in the process, but they from all those other companies submitted feedback. That's true on one hand, but I think they reached out to these other companies who provided that because they're known for their reactivity libraries, while Meteor is not known for its reactivity library because it's always a part of Meteor and not a part of itself. I don't know. You could argue now, okay, but in React there is also, this is all in React, so you can't use React state and effect outside of React. That's also true, but I just think it got hidden under the surface. That's what I mean.
Well, I mean, it could be. It could be. I mean, there might be a number of different reasons. And also, I think we were heads down for the last however many months just trying to get fibers out and get async in, right? So I think that there's, even if they had wanted to have us involved, and I assume that some of this is self-selection too, which is if you see it and you think that you have something to contribute, or you think that it needs to go in a certain way, you're probably gonna head over there, and maybe that's how it went. I'm not entirely sure. I can't speak for them. I don't know how it went. But I do know that, the Meteor team was very, very busy with the first focus, which is keeping Meteor alive by moving and getting us from, node 14 to current node. And that meant the transition from fibers to async await. And that was a sort of all-encompassing focus for a very long time. So, I think now though that we can pick our heads up, we need to kind of like, raise our heads like little gophers and look around and see what's going on in the prairie, and see, what might be working out there. There are a couple of things and please correct me if I'm wrong about this, but the one of the things I deduced, and I'd hoped to get my diagrams done so I could show you visually, and I will continue working on this because I really do want to get a good sense and have some feedback so that we have a common language, visual language that we can look to talk about this. But there is a distinction with tracker and with signals. And they say this from time to time, although they don't always say it, because the examples sometimes show it in isolation of, and I haven't put some examples up here where you actually have like component code, display information where you would have where you would see the effects of the fine grain updates. But the intention of signals is really for UI computations. And tracker is sort of an all-body reactive manager in a sense, right? We're managing the reactivity all the way, through the entire stack. But signals is really meant for, maintaining that state in the UI. And so there's some things I have here. It's granularity level is tracker is a computation level, where signals is fine grained. The reactivity scope is it's global, right? And signals are meant for very, very specific locations on that page. The rendering is, it's UI independent, I think, right? But you see that with the signals implementations that we looked at so far for the different frameworks, they are very, very much tied to those different frameworks. So until they come up with some kind of standard that may be implementation independent, there's a much tighter coupling over there. We can do asynchronous as well as synchronous reactive updates, but in the case of signals, it is mostly synchronous. There are some experiments right now to do asynchronous with it, but it's not on the radar as far as the spec is concerned. And I should say, by the way, that one of the biggest players in this is Angular. Angular has been using RxJS for its managing its reactivity in the application, and it's very complex to write all this wrapper code to manage this. And what they've done is they've pulled out just a synchronous portion that they would do, and they've replaced it with signals as an experiment. It's still very experimental right now. This is not released code yet, but they're experimenting with that, and they're doing the sort of like, well, here's the synchronous way of doing it, and by the way, you've got a lightweight way of writing up this code now, rather than trying to manage it through RxJS. So there is something to be said there about that. And then obviously in flexibility, I mean, it is much more flexible in terms of that we can use tracker across multiple different types of views, whereas on signals, it's just on the component basis itself. So there are always trade-offs in anything that we do here, right? It's like, you get the benefit of something, but you give up something else. You never quite get what they say. There's no such thing as a free lunch, right? So, some things are great, and for your use cases, it's going to be like, well, signals, we should have signals. We should be doing signals, right? That would be much better. But in other cases, you might say, well, once I've got that, it doesn't really translate well to this other use case. And so now I'm going to have to use something else. So, but I do think that because I remember that there was a lot of discussion with regard to preserving isomorphism and maintaining the sort of synchronous behavior that we had with fibers. The question in my mind was, would signals allow us to achieve that in some way? I mean, I don't know. That's why I throw it out there. I have no idea.
I think there is one thing to consider, and that is on the client we have a little different overall, a little bit different environment. So synchronous code on the client is not so much of a problem as it would be on the server, for example, because you're the only one executing the code, right? And on the server, it's much different because it has to handle many requests and responses and so on. And most of the time, you don't even realize it that most of the client code is synchronous, and it's still a smooth experience. And there's one thing I wanted to add just for this thing with the trade-offs.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel personally, and maybe the React users will also tell me that I'm totally wrong, but I feel that a lot of these signals and signal-like structures, like use state in React or even use reducer, they're often oriented for scalar values. Like you have a scalar value, like a number or a Boolean or a string or something, and then you start composing your reactive data structure. And this is great for when you're, as you said, when you're on the component level. Usually you want to be very granular and only on these scalar values. And the more complex you get, the more complex you write your code. But here's the thing, and I feel that when I'm writing React Native code, I have some situations I write my own reducers, and even then it gets really complicated to the point where I think, like, why does it have to be so complicated? Simply because I have a very complex use case. This is where I personally love the tracker style, because tracker is much of an overhead on simple cases, on scalar values. It's much of an overhead because you have to write a new reactive var for everything, and then this getter, setter, and so on. Yeah. When you have complex data structures, you can write your own complex data structure and feed it with tracker, and then and you keep your sanity, because and you will see it later on in the example. I'm just teasing a little bit for the upcoming example.
So one of you guys take up this question that Lori has here. Can signal front-end frameworks be made compatible with tracker backend? I think this is the question we're asking ourselves at this point. Can it be done, and is it worth doing? I don't know at this point. We're just sort of, part of this exercise was just to kind of take a look at it, see what people are doing, bring the information here, and then share it, and then hopefully many of us will just run off and do our own science experiments at some point. I did a science experiment this morning. I tried to be a robot. I've got like this little fake mohawk going on here. But that's not going to help anybody with anything. So, what is Kelly saying? I think that's something that should be taking time to explore. Okay. Yeah.
But it's good. So if someone explores that and have some insights on that, then please share it with us. Share it with us in the forums or
we can already take a look. I think it depends on the signals implementation, but for example, in Solid, as I said, I could have used that, or I could have used tracker and just plug it into the signals, then it would just play nice for the most part. So I think the answer is pretty much yes on that. But again, it depends on how the signal is implemented, because as Alim has shown, everybody has a bit different implementation. So we'll kind of wait how it will be standardized.
Alim, you quickly.
What'd you say?
You skipped this comparison table very fast, and I think it was a great table to see the several implementations there.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go back to these because we kind of jumped ahead. So let me run back up the different types of. So here are the different implementations, and here's some feedback on what you get, what they're doing, and what you're getting, and they all have some different goals, right? In SolidJS, they're from the start, they want it to be a fine-grained, on a per signal basis. And in the case of Solid.js, this is one where they're definitely showing like the component doesn't re-render. It's just the value gets updated. And so this is sort of like the ideal, I guess, in terms of how they were looking at it. Vue's implementation is proxy based. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm not quite sure exactly what that means. Kuster, I think you understand this better than I do, right? And it's on component level.
Yeah, I mean, in Vue.js, when you declare a ref, or a ref is usually used for rather scalar value, and if you want, if for complex values, you use a reactive. But this is just surface level. There are some more techniques down that road. But what it uses is this JavaScript proxy, which is it's a deep implementation in JavaScript where you can create a proxy object to any other object that handles all requests and responses between getter and setter and some of the others to that object to granularly manage this object access and manipulation. But here it is, they use also that in order to hook into this reactivity cycle. So they use it as this observer dispatcher, something like this. So it's quite a clever idea, because they abstracted all that rather complex code otherwise away using the proxy, using a native JavaScript implementation already.
So it's the proxy acts like a broker.
Yeah, between the access and the setter and informing the reactivity system. This is why you have this value.
Okay, and Patrick is, hey Patrick, so we had the episode this week. I know you missed it. You missed us doing it last week. I told you that we were postponing it to get a little more in. So thank you for joining us again this week. He says only the proxy is reactive. Mutating the original object will not trigger updates. So that's
what I mean. So when you manipulate this object through the proxy, then these updates are actually dispatched, I would say.
Yeah, folks, I'm so happy that you are participating this way. This is what we wanted from this. It wasn't going to be a lecture. This was sort of like, this is what we discovered. This is what we understand. What do you know? How can you help us understand this better? So, Quick is a little different, right? Because Quick really pre-renders things on the server and then, displays it. But it does this hydration, right? And it's a little different. I haven't played with Quick too much, but it was one of those frameworks, I think about a year and a half ago, that everybody was getting excited about. There's Quick, and they've got these concept of islands, and it's one of those things where I think, like, what are ideas in some of these new frameworks that we can benefit from, and in what cases are they very, very specific for that particular use case and really doesn't blend itself well into a platform like ours, where we are hitting a number of different use cases, not just a single one, right? I mentioned about Angular. A React it's proposing to do it as a replacement for hooks. So, and then obviously Knockout has its early it's an early implementation for managing its subscriptions. So, and that's where a lot of the ideas come from. So one of the things I did not have here, and what I was going to chat about, but I don't have it diagrammed out, was some of the other libraries that are out there for managing reactivity. We mentioned RxJS, which is a little heavy, but it does the job, and it has been doing the job for many years. MobX was one of the early ones. Knockout we mentioned. Vue.js refs we talked about. Solid.js signals, and Svelte runes. And I'm going to pop over to runes in a minute, because that's kind of interesting, and I think, Kuster, you've got a little to say about that too, don't you? Let me just pop over. The difference between signals and hooks. So I'm going to put this up for a second. We're not going to go over this because I don't want to spend a lot of time, because we have other things. I think Jan, you've also mentioned that in terms of reactives and refs, that refs are really sort of like a flat representation, and reactives are much richer, and it's a deeper data structure. And we're going to go into some alternative data structures, reactive data structures with you today, correct?
At least for Meteor Tracker.
Right, so, exactly. Okay, so I'm just putting this, okay, so I think this has been up enough that if you wanted to, you could pause it. One of the things that we deal with a lot are the concept of observables, right? We basically have this wait state for changes that are going to be made, and then the subscribers, the subscriptions get consumed by the observables. The observables, oh, there's a change, and then we have the update made. It's a little different with signals. Signals don't use this sort of, this is sort of how do you say it? It's not direct. It's an indirect way of making the updates, and signals are far more direct. And I think we can have a deeper discussion of this. I put these notes together with some examples. I spent some time going through. I'm not sure that this is all correct. This is my interpretation. So I think it would be worthwhile to spend some time, another time, going over this, and maybe doing it through a forum post or something, right? To really kind of explore it deeper and make sure that my thinking is not totally off. Okay, and we did the traffic and signals. So I want to get to this because, Kuster, you were chatting about this before, runes and signals. And I realized when I was looking earlier that they have a previous reactive component called stores. And so they've got stores, but now they've got runes, and runes is kind of their implementation of signals. So how does this all work? What are they? So I found some information. I just dropped it into a table, and I thought maybe we could all look at it together. And if you have a good understanding of this ahead of time, maybe you can lead us through this, right? So runes is their new reactive model. It's based on signals, but it's hidden from direct developer interaction. It's going to be fine-grained component scope reactivity. That's how they're planning on doing it. Stores, which is their existing method of handling reaction state, can be shared across components. They're not directly built on signals, but use a similar principle. And they're application level, so they're global. They're much broader, right, in terms of their scope. And those are a couple of the examples. And then, of course, signals is basically a reference point, right?
Would be great to have someone with some Svelte experience around and give us some insight there, because I personally don't have experience with it yet, and so I can't really say anything additionally about that. But as I think, Jam is also there.
Hey, John. So let's add what he's saying. There you go. Oh, it also uses proxies.
Yeah.
And
also from what I've gathered about runes, you can also use them like in normal JavaScript code as well, though that from what I've kind of read there, it did seem a little bit too obnoxious to kind of do that, at least from what I've kind of seen there, but it's work in progress.
I've been personally using runes to kind of figure out what I'm going to do with my life.
That's not how you use runes. Runes are magical.
Magic. So I would say some of this, some of the things that we've been accused of as a community, well, not as a community, but as a platform, right? That the Meteor's been accused of as a platform of, this sort of magic in terms of how the reactivity happens. I think everybody wants that magic because, look at what's going on here, right? It's happening elsewhere and it's happening bigger. So it's but it does seem that the idea behind this is there are a couple of things I think that Signals also promises, which is you should be able to trace, the progress of how things are reacting much easier than the way we have to do it through these indirections with observables. So it's promising to make debugging a little easier, a little simpler. It's one of the things I think that they talk about. And what's Kelly saying? Kelly's saying that I just use horoscopes, and of course John is right on topic. He's not pulling away from it. I think Svelte's fine-grained reactivity will play nicely with Tracker. Oh, that's interesting. So, John, are you proposing that you're gonna give it a try to see whether or not you can make it make it work? And of course, Kuster's gone totally off the rails now.
What? You're planning your life? That's crazy.
Django had magic removal. Can Meteor have that too?
Yeah.
What is magic removal? I don't know what that is.
Sounds very magical to me.
Yeah.
Well, sounds like I would say like the minimum Meteor application without Tracker, DDP subscription, any of that, and it's just very bare bones. That's how it sounds like.
So, does anybody want to describe how Tracker works all the way through? I think there are a bunch of different things. Like Tracker's got a bunch of things that it plays with, right? There's the reactive arm, the reactive dict. There's live query. What else? What else is involved? And of course, you got MongoDB at the back end, right? To store state.
Observe.
Observables.
The observer, the observe sequence that plays an important role to connecting the MongoDB with the templates in place, for example.
Right.
And, these observed changes and all these things are basically also working on top of that.
So Tracker is doing a lot of work.
In MeteorJS, it's basically the core component on the client to make this whole subscribe, publish pattern a reality.
So what Signal is doing is just a small bit of the work that Tracker is doing altogether, is what we're saying.
I mean, Tracker is also designed for this very specific, or it was designed with this very specific purpose in mind, that we will have data coming from the server being automatically pushed towards the components that listen to this data and makes them available, and also part of this whole optimistic UI. So it's like it was never thought of being a standalone thing.
Yeah.
That's why it's also more globally accessible. I mean, there is still, when you look at the Tracker documentation, and it's you will see that as an example, there's still reactive dict, okay, sorry, I will not do anymore. On the Meteor documentation on Tracker, you will see that there is still session used as an example, and session is basically a global reactive variable that you can use across your application, across templates. So that was a very specific use case at the beginning. Nowadays, it's discouraged to use sessions, although I still use it and from time to time because it has its place there. But it's totally different from this very component-specific reactive updates on things like a scalar value.
Yeah. I was hoping that somebody from the Meteor team would have weighed in. I know that often they lurk here.
Vacation is a strong force.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, listen, we spent quite a bit of time on this. I think there's a lot more that we could spend talking about, but I don't want to just beat this to death, because I think this is something that we're going to have a lot of side conversations, and it's going to get expanded upon, hopefully in the forums, and we'll see more and more discussion about this, and maybe there'll be an issue that gets opened, and we'll carry on from there. So I want to make sure that you guys remember that if you like what we're doing, hit the like button. It gets us noticed with the YouTube algorithm, but it also lets other people know. I mean, the algorithm is important because it's a search function, and it lets other people know that there's something valuable that they could benefit from. And I hope that this is a conversation that we think more people could benefit from, and maybe create some excitement about what's going on with Meteor and the future of Meteor. So that is my hope. And in addition to that, if you haven't done so far, hit the subscribe button. We're, I think, at 312 subscribers right now, which is awesome. We'd love to have more. We want to grow this community. We want to have more people interacting, sharing their thoughts, giving their ideas, telling us we're wrong, whatever it might be. And maybe one of these days you guys will come on and be a guest here, or maybe one day be a host, because we could always use a different frame of reference, thought pattern. I think it's wonderful when we can make this richer and richer and richer. But now that we've done that, now that we've said that, I want to move on to getting our friend Jan Kuster ready to go. I mean, he's been coding. He's been like cracking his knuckles, getting his fingers ready. I don't want to disappoint him.
Oh.
So, Jan, are you ready to take over?
Oh, yes, I am. No, I actually told you that it would be great to play the video.
Yeah.
So,
Do we
but
have
it
it?
would be good if you play the video instead of me, because
Okay. Where is it?
you have this better connection. So I shared the video in the private chat already, and
Okay.
you
Okay.
just
Okay.
need to
I'll
play
get
it. So
it. I'll get it.
it's already prepared and it works, guys.
Yep.
In the past, we did some live coding, and when I wasn't 100,000 billions percent prepared for that video, then I actually crashed things in live, and it was really hard to get back on track, because it's also confusing for me as well at that point.
Right.
Which is why we will this time play a recorded video.
Okay, so let me do this. Let me stop sharing what I've got. I'm going to reshare, because I have to share with audio. If I don't do that, then it's going to be a little bit of a mess. So, here it is. Hang on one second. Let me move that over here. Okay, and then I am going to. So you're learning how the sausage is made, so to speak. And that's just how it goes. Okay, also share the audio. Yes. Okay. Let's go with that. And I'm going to start playing this thing. Are you guys ready?
Welcome to another MeteorJS tutorial.
Can you hear it well?
On reactive data structures. And I want to show you how to write your own reactive data structure, in particular, how to write a reactive stack. And that's nothing more than a reactive version of the classic stack implementation. And if you forgot what a stack is, this is basically an abstract data type that has this last in, first out principle of items being pushed onto the stack and then being popped off the stack for access. That's basically it. It's not very complex, and this is why I love it as an example to show you how to create your own reactive data structure. So let's get started. By the way, if you still don't understand what a stack is, I will link a resource in the description, but you will also see how it works after this tutorial. So hopefully you will also get a better understanding of stack if this is still new for you. So have Meteor installed and then create a new Meteor project using Meteor Create. And then it's asking you about the project name. I will call this Reactive Data Structure as acronym RDS. And then I'll choose Blaze as my front end technology. Of course, you're free to choose whatever you like. You could also use React or Vue.js or Solid or Svelte or whatever you want, but I'm sticking with Blaze because it integrates best with Meteor, and this is what I still like the most, as it has this old school Meteor style, as I know from back then. So let's go into the project, and then run Meteor as a command in order to start the project. It's now building the packages, of course, and while it's building, let me quickly show you the structure. This time we only want to work on the client side because there is nothing related to the server yet involved. And of course, there might be chances to use reactive data on the server, but for now we only stick to the client, and this is why we work in the client folder and only work on main HTML and main.js. So while I talked about that, our website has loaded, and as you can see, this is the default boilerplate that has been loaded. And then I'm going to remove all these defaults here because we don't need that for our tutorial. Just remove them. Also remove the title and rename it something like reactive data structures. And then also open the main.js file. And there you can also remove all these boilerplate templates. We don't need them for now. Okay, if you save that, then Meteor will automatically reload, and then you can see in this that this is now our updated view. There is only this title, reactive data structures, and nothing else. And that's okay for now, because before we go into any visualization of the stack, we first have to implement a stack. And this is pretty easy. Simply go into client.js, create a new file, and call it reactive stack. And then let's export a class named reactive stack. And in the constructor of our reactive stack, we instantiate some items. That's the underlying data structure. So that's an array, basically. And to the outside for our stack, we implement only some functions like push. So with this, we're pushing a new item to the items. Unfortunately, the JavaScript arrays already have a push functionality for us implemented. That's pretty nice. And we just return the new size, items.length. That's it. And then we have another operation called pop. And for pop, we simply return, sorry, I just forgot, it's this.items, of course. And for the pop operation, we return this.items.pop, because what it does is it pops the item as with the stack and returns it. And this is what we do with pop. We remove it from the stack and return it also. But there's also another function that's called peek. And with peek, we want to return the topmost item, but we don't want to pop it from the stack. And this is something like items at -1. There we get the most top item from the stack. If you never heard of this items.add function, by the way, this is a more recent addition to the JavaScript standard, and you can read it up, for example, on MDN. I will link the resource in the description, and it's pretty comfortable to use this instead of items.length -1 and so on. Okay, and then maybe we want to have one more thing, and that's called size. And I will show you later on why this is, why we use another function instead of directly accessing the items.length. Okay, with this, we have already created a basic stack structure. It's a minimal stack structure, but because we want to visualize the stack, we also need to implement a all function that simply returns a copy of all the items in the stack. And this is return an array.concat this.items, because this is basically a copy, a shallow copy of the items. So the items themselves are not copied, but the overall array is copied. So you don't manipulate this stack's underlying array. That's fine so far, but it doesn't preserve the stack order. So we will have to reverse it later on, because otherwise, if we iterate this, it will show actually the first one as the first and not the last one. But as we learned at the beginning of this video, this is a last in, first out data structure. Okay, this is a non-reactive stack, but let's integrate this into our template now to make it reactive. First of all, create a template.stack dot on created. That's the function for our new template. And then every template in Blaze has an instance, and there we can instantiate a new stack, new reactive stack. That's the stack of our template. And then we want to have some helpers. For example, template.stack.helpers all. Or let's call it items. That's maybe even better. And then we say return template.instance.stack.all. So with this helper, we allow the template to iterate over all entries. Usually you don't use that in a stack because you don't give access to the underlying data structure. But here we want to have it because we want to visualize it. So I'm adding this only for you to get a better understanding. But as I said, to visualize the stack in the correct way, we need to reverse the order. So we call toReversed. That's, by the way, the non-mutating version of the array reverse function, but it's not mutating the actual array, but returns a new array. So I suggest you to use this instead of array.reverse. Okay, and then we want to have also the topmost item. And in order to get the topmost item, we return the same stack, but with the peak function, because that's not mutating the stack, but allows us to read the top item. Okay, and then we also need some events to push to the stack or pop from the stack. And we will implement some buttons. So I will have some events on click dot. I will call it push btn. And there will be an event called pop btn. And I know this sounds a little bit abstract here, but let's move over to the actual template. So let me split this and in parallel write the actual template here. Okay, so the stack template I mentioned here is basically this one. And there are two functions here. First of all, we have this items and the top function. And we have the user input. So let me start with the user inputs this time, because if the stack grows, then it would move the user inputs. So put them on top so they never move on the screen. First of all, there is a classic HTML input of type text. This is where we want to enter any item there. And then we have a button with the class push btn. Or push, this is where we want to invoke the push with the content of the input. And that's actually what I'm listening here in the template.stack.events. And then we also want to have a pop btn. And this is to pop from the stack. And then we want to peek into the top. So we say top and then top. That's always showing the topmost item of the stack. This is basically the result from this function. Okay, and then we want to visualize the whole stack, just for you to understand. And then it's an unordered list. And we want to iterate all stack items. So we use an hash each item in items. And items is this function here. And then you write a list item with the item content there. And we close the each. Okay, looks good so far. We of course also have to include the template into the body so that it's actually loaded. But let me reload in the meantime, but there is still something required here that's not full of it. So that's how it looks like. Then this is the input. There's some push, some pop, and the top. But as you see, there's nothing happening because we haven't implemented anything here. So let's quickly implement this. First of all, prevent default the event because we don't want to send any forms, but we need the instance. And this instance here, this is always passed to the events. That's the same instance as in this uncreated block. And here we want to, first of all, get the item. And we say instance $, and then we need a class name for the input to get the item actually, and it's like item, okay? And we need this dot item here. So this is basically, like you know from the past, this ancient jQuery accessor. You could also write a document query selector, but you use this in place favorably because it scopes only the template, so it will not look up the whole document object model, but only scope to this template. So it's blazingly fast. So you got this item, and then you want to push this item to the stack. Instance.stack.push item. Okay, and then let's do a console.debug of the instance.stack all. Then let's run this just to see what happens if we push onto the stack. And you see there it is. But as you can see also, it's pushed onto the stack. It's pushed onto the stack, but it's not in the list. So therefore, we now need to make the stack reactive. In order to do that, we get back to our stack implementation here, the reactive stack. And in order to make it reactive, we only have to focus on what Tracker, that's Meteor's reactivity system, provides for us. Tracker is fairly complex and it can offer a lot of things to make very complex scenarios possible. But for our scenario, we really only need one thing, and that's tracker.dependency. This dependency class is basically something like an invoker to any observers to your data structure. And with this, you tell any observer, like an auto run, for example, that, hey, there is some data change. Please rerun this computation and get the new result. So we import tracker and create a new tracker dependency on this data structure. This step, short for dependency, is a new tracker.dependency. And if we have a writing operation where we want to inform observers that something has changed in the data, we have changed things in the data, then we call this .dep.changed. That's the function, and we call this on the push, because on push we changed the underlying data structure, and on pop we changed the underlying data structure. So this is what we call there. And for the read operation, we want to ask if the tracker is actually active. So if tracker.active, that means if we are in a running computation, then we want to call this .dep.depend. And with this, we can simply add this to size and to all, to any read operation. And this already makes it reactive. So of course, there is a lot of hidden complexity we haven't shown in this tutorial yet, but this is also just an entry series, okay? So let's save this and let's see how it looks like when I'm pushing to the stack. And as you can see, there is now object, and why is that? Because I haven't read the value, I just have read the item here, and this item is currently the input object, so we also need the value, and this is item.val. That's the function to get the value, and we also want to clear the input, so we after that call item.val null, and then it's working. So we add something to the top, it's foo, and then the next one is bar. And as you can see now, because we reverse the order, the topmost item is always on the top of this stack list. And then it's move. And as you can see there, so one thing left, it's the pop functionality, but this should be the simplest of all. Maybe you already know how to implement it. You basically run instance.stack.pop. Let's reload this page. Let it automatically reload. So we add something to the stack. and then we use pop to remove it from the stack. And as you can see, this top always refers to what we peek from the topmost item. And that's basically it. Congratulations, you have implemented a reactive stack which you can use in any of your MeteorJS frontend, maybe React, Vue, Svelte, Solid, or Blaze. And I hope you liked the video. Please leave a like, subscribe for more of these types of videos. Keep looking into the description because we will constantly update links there and resources. And of course, wait and look for our upcoming tutorials on reactive data structures. There will be many more, like queues, lists, linked lists, trees, whatever you can imagine. We will go through many of them. And with that, I wish you all the best and have fun. Happy coding. We're all eating popcorn.
Hey, this is one of my go-to pleasures in Japan. This is like very special popcorn to me. And we are back, guys.
I hope you enjoyed the video.
I did. And yeah, Alem, you still have something for us?
Hang on a second here, guys. I realized I was talking and nobody was hearing because my microphone was off. So let's see what they do. Where are we here? Oh, we've kind of gone through a lot of this already, and we've had this discussion. So I think we're sort of at the end of it. So what do you think, guys? Should we go forward here? Should we have a deeper discussion on whether or not? Well, I mean, what do you think? What do you think, Storyteller, in terms of the Signals presentation so far? In terms of, do you think there's something there? Do you think we should be exploring this further as a community?
I think it's definitely worth to keep an eye on this, especially once the API is more stabilized between the different implementations, and kind of see where to, I would say, kind of jump in and make it easier to integrate. For example, with Solid, it's super easy, but with other, not so much. So I think first, probably more on the integration side, maybe get inspired by some specific and extend the functionality of Tracker if applicable. That would be a step. I think I really like the idea of making Tracker independent NPM package. I think that's kind of different topic altogether that we kind of have to move probably towards that in the long term.
Yeah.
So starting with something like this will also kind of potentially get adoption and the talk outside of Meteor, which would be good. So definitely, I think something to keep an eye out. But with Meteor, we've always been conservative, so I think we should probably stick to that a bit in many, or like in how we can approach this as well.
Yeah.
Especially since this is like very early on.
I think there's something to be said though about, as you said, Tracker being independent. Going back to Meteor and really trying to, remove these tight couplings.
Yep.
Of the different components, because it really slows down the ability to try different things and see whether or not, we can, swap things out and put something in that's, a little differently thought out, maybe better thought out. The thing that really struck me about Signals when I started looking into it was the notion of the level of fine-grained reactivity, which I thought we kind of had, that I thought that was the pitch that React was giving in a sense when React first came out, right? Which is, look, we're gonna rebuild the entire tree based on the changes that are made, and then we're gonna diff that, shadow DOM against the real one, and then we're only going to update those changes that are actually made, right? And I thought, oh, this is pretty fine grained, but there's something going on here that's even finer from what I understand, and it's faster, and it's less memory intensive, is what I understand, and it's and it avoids unnecessary computations, right? And this is the claim, right? I don't know the magic underneath, right? There's a magic, and I don't know exactly what's happening there, and I'm hoping that others are in here who can help us. Is there some Meteor code using solid signal repo? That'd be nice. Well, I don't know. I think Storyteller mentioned that he did some work once. Maybe if he's able to find that and then share it, if it's shareable, then maybe we'll be able to do it. Or was that? Did you say that was client work that you did, or
out of my personal website? So it's,
yeah. Is it
anything? No, if anything, it would be sponsorware.
Okay. All right. So, we'll have to look for examples elsewhere, where we can. But my thought is, if this is something that helps, because you hear from time to time about people that are running into, these intermediate computations that render intermediate values, right? Before you actually get the final computation, and so you're getting these renders that don't necessarily reflect the true state of what the values are supposed to be, and that can be very frustrating to people. So the idea that you would only get the final computation, and it would be direct, and you wouldn't have to worry about an observable picking something up that's half baked and presented, I thought would be might be worthwhile in pursuing for Meteor.
Yeah, I think we need to move on, because there is still one section that is left that we even haven't covered yet, and it's already 1.5 hours. So please, guys, stay with us, because it's really useful.
Okay. Are we talking about what are we talking about now?
About the useful resources.
Resources.
OSSRANK. Hang on a second. Let me pull this thing up here. All right. Where is it now? I apologize, guys.
No worries. Alan, pull it up, and in the meantime, I just have one saying more to this whole thing with getting tracker independent. There was a time when Gabriel was, before he left, I was talking with Gabriel of making a Meteor SDK, and I think this is something like a Meteor NPM SDK to integrate Meteor in other platforms as well. And I think having a standalone tracker as a standalone NPM package being part of this Meteor software SDK ecosystem would be a great first step. But maybe we talk about that in a future episode more in depth. Sorry. Yeah.
That is good. No, you bought me time, and that's good. So, guys, here's a really, I think, useful tool that you might benefit from. It is a tool that was built by a fellow by the name of Ry Walker. And last week we had the episode where we talked about the foundation, or actually it's 2 weeks ago, because last week was supposed to have been this one. But we had the episode on the Meteor Foundation, and I mentioned that one of the motivations for writing that letter was I had a call with Ry Walker. He was leaving Astronomer at the time, and he was planning on starting something up, and he was working on this little tool which became OSSRANK. And and so it's if you know Ry, and I'll mention again a little about him. He's one of the co-founders of Differential, which was a Meteor dev shop in the day. He went off, he built Astronomer, which is a data platform with Meteor. I think it's evolved since then, and I don't think it uses Meteor anymore. And now he's founded a company called Tembo, and which is, he's very data focused these days. So that's where he is. So it's a really cool tool. what it does is it reads through GitHub and it finds different open source projects, and then he has a ranking mechanism by which he ranks it based on the commit velocity, the community votes, and also how fast moving the project is. And I guess that's a combination of probably that commit velocity and community votes. I don't have all the details here, but if you're interested, and you're interested, to me, if you are interested in looking at packages and npm projects that are out there and try to figure out if I'm looking at two different projects, how do I know which one I should pick up? And he's got this compare tool that allows you to select a project and compare it with another one. So, you could just do that, and then you can compare it with some other project or projects, right? So I'm not doing anything that makes a lot of sense here. It's just putting two things together, and then you can take a look at them side by side. But if you ever get to the point where you're not sure whether or not you should commit to learning a library, for instance, or picking up a project, and you think that something like this might help you reduce your decision space, by all means, go about and do it. Now, Meteor's on this, and I would say that as good and interesting as this project is, I think it's got some drawbacks, and I think you guys, by the way, have had a look at this, and I'm going to let you weigh in on what you think. But so, in terms of Meteor, it's got Meteor here, and its ranking has dropped a bit over time, and partly because it looks at the amount of velocity. Now you can see in the early days of Meteor, there was a lot of development work, a lot of commits and so on going on, and over time there was less. But you can see that it's picked up again since, and obviously it's comparing past to the future, and or past to the present, and it's not really seeing the same kind of velocity that it had before. Now, it does have some drawbacks here. For instance, I noticed that Jan is listed in number 9 here, and also listed in number 13 in terms of contributing, and so it's one of those things where it's not really there are errors in here. It does have this really nice tree map that shows the different companies that the biggest contributors belong to, and so some of this is really old, like Apollo and MDG are there. Some of the folks that over at Google were actually people at MDG. So there's some really interesting things going on here. I think it's a really interesting tool, and I think it could be beneficial. So that's it. I just wanted to share that, and yeah, let me know what you think. Jan and Jan?
Yeah, I think might be a bit back. I actually created the Meteor page, or maybe on some similar rankings. So there's quite a few tools around like this. So it's always good to pick a few more. Kind of look at multiple tools and do more research for yourself as well if you are looking for a specific library. Also, especially if it's like for something super important, then these tools will really help you provide information. But also, as you pointed out, some of the drawbacks, that as well might be something that you kind of have to look into as well for those tools.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, again, check it out. It's OSSRANK.com. I'll drop it into the chat here for those who want to play around with it. And we'll have it in the description of the show.
Yeah, and sign up and vote for Meteor.
Yep, exactly. All right, and let's see what is left. So I'm going to just take this off here and put our pretty faces back on. We're not stuffing our faces with popcorn at this minute. So, Kuster, what should people do?
Yes, again, I have to remind you all about subscribing, because you will not miss any updates. and you will also help us to grow, because it's really important to spread the message, grow the community, and tell people and tell the dev community basically that Meteor is still alive and very active, and that we have so much to offer. And I think there are so many people just don't realize that. And with every subscriber, we get a little bit more towards that goal. And you can help us with that. And also, of course, you can help us personally with that, of course, as well. And from there, I think we don't have anything to add anymore.
No.
And hopefully can tell everybody now to happily enjoy the weekend.
Just follow up with us. And next week, we're going to be going over the MeteorJS roadmap. We're going to try to do that once a quarter. I believe we have Leonardo joining us from the team, and Felipe Nevola from Quave is going to likely join us also. Maybe we'll get Gabrielle and somebody else also to kind of keep us honest as we go over it. But I think it's something that you're probably all interested in knowing what's happening next and why. So with that, yeah, have a great weekend, guys. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.